All right, we're on.
Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And congratulations. Release day yesterday. Excited for you. I got it yesterday. I started. I'm going through it and loving it. Really grateful.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, it was a cool day. I was telling my girlfriend, you only get probably a few days like that, kind of those once in a lifetime days. And so I had like a book launch event last night, and everybody was just really kind and encouraging. And so I'm like really tired now, but it was one of those really rich.
Yeah.
I just feel like I came off of a really rich day that I want to like remember,
Yeah.
But now it's weird because I've been talking about this book for over 5 months, like in pre-order season. I've been selling the book and talking about it for like 5 months, and nobody's really been reading it until like yesterday. And so finally, this thing that I've been talking about is in other people's hands, and I kind of I'm almost like I want to stop talking about it, but now people are just like, hey, we just got it, we're ready to talk about it. So it's kind of a funny like timeline thing that happens, but no, it's I'm really excited to see how it hits people.
Same.
Yeah. I listened to it on audio yesterday, or started listening to it. I'm almost through, and it's I think I was just what struck me the most was how compelling it is, and how loving and hospitable and invitational it is with these ideas that I know that could be threatening to people who might have grown up thinking that this is a deal breaker, and hell is a deal breaker. You got to believe in it. And so the way that so much of it is that's the whole point. Like the whole point is avoid hell. So the way you invite people in with, I think, a lot of humility and it's just invitational, that I really appreciated that aspect.
I'm glad you felt that. I have a feeling like I don't know if like an evangelical reviewer gets a hold of it, he probably won't. I'm like, this isn't humble at all. This arrogant no hell. But yeah, I tried to be aware of just a lot of the different audiences. I mean, the people are coming to this thing from so many different perspectives. I have a very specific background, raised in fundamentalism, then spent a lot of time in evangelicalism. My editor was really helpful because she is fully deconverted. She was a former Christian, and she helped me make it even, I think, a bit more approachable to people who maybe don't consider themselves Christians at all. And then, people that maybe were more progressive Christians, I think is an interesting category, because I would say I'm a progressive Christian now, but that's not my upbringing. And I know that a lot of people who grew up as more mainline Christians maybe wouldn't have had that sort of upbringing. Although I'm coming to realize that even in progressive Christianity, hell is often still, they're not really sure what to do with it, and they kind of avoid it, but it's still, at least for the people in the pews, still a part of their mental model for, one of the reasons why you should probably be a Christian rather than not. And so that's been an interesting thing to see. I think that it's still a conversation that even needs to happen a little bit outside of just the cul-de-sac of evangelicalism, because we have to have a bigger vision, I think, for what this spirituality is all about than just what's going to happen after we die.
For sure. And you talk about that in the book, about how that impacts our life here on earth and how we treat people, and how all of those things. I think one part that I appreciated is also how accessible it was. I know I'd read some books, more academic theological books about Christian universalism, that I would try to like impart little nuggets to folks, like, oh my gosh, I just read this and I think you would love it. And then they're like, trying to read
you can't give David Bentley Hart to your friend.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
I can barely get through David Bentley Hart. I'm a reader, and I love his writing. He's absolutely brilliant. But then I'm like, what did I just read? Like, what? I finished That All Shall Be Saved. I remember I closed it and I was like, wow, that was incredible. And then I was like, wait, what was his argument? Like, how did that? Like, I don't think I understand it. I need to read it again.
No, totally. Yeah,
I know who he doesn't like. I'm not sure what he thinks about universal.
He's such a funny writer. I mean, I wish I could channel his snark and brilliance, but I tried to condense. I took some nuggets from him. But you're right. I tried to put the cookies on the shelf where people could reach them.
That's a good way.
Universal
Good way of putting it.
cookie shelving salvation.
Oh yeah. Well, and I think one takeaway for me from his book and really from my maybe descent into Christian universalism, which always starts with gosh, I really hope this is true. Like I think there was like this feeling when you're on the verge of something like that where you're like
Yeah.
I want this to be it, and I
I
think
don't
in
even
your
understand people that don't want that to be true. Like, well,
right.
that's that's what really was like the bit of a mind like screw for me was when I realized, oh, the Bible doesn't like really require this. So it's like, so why are we choosing to believe this? You guys don't want this to be true, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, and like that kind of moment of accepting that reality. I remember texting with Danny because this was like maybe maybe 6-ish years ago that I feel like I just went kind of more all in, or 5 years ago, and I think we were texting about I said it feels like a reconversion in a way that instead of like being like now I've got to evangelize everyone so that they're saved, was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I love everyone in a deeper way. And this relief and the way that anxiety and stress just left, like I felt like I just want everybody to have this peace. And I think that's what comes through in your writing too, really well.
Yeah, I do. I think there is a piece that comes with that. And also an ability to just love people where they're at. I
Yep.
have a quote. There's a Thomas Merton quote at the beginning of, I want to say it's chapter 2 or 3. Hold on, I'm going to find it right now. Where he says that exact thing that, sorry.
No, you're
He
good.
says the beginning of love is the will to let those we love be perfectly themselves, the resolution not to twist them to fit our own image. And I couldn't do that when I believed in hell. If loving someone where they're at meant just allowing them to continue down a path that would lead them into hell, you can't really just be comfortable with where people are. Or you felt like you were betraying your faith to do that. I actually felt guilty for not being more pushy about my faith. Like that was
Right.
how I grew up. I felt like, oh, if I was more spiritual, I would be more aggressive probably with my friends and like really trying to get them to come to church or really understand the gospel, because otherwise these guys are going to go to hell. And so there is something about just being able to relax into relationships and actually realize like, okay, I don't have to change them. I wonder if they might have something for me. Which
Yeah,
is
right. Yeah.
something that I think we would miss.
Yeah.
Which I think even Jesus could enter into a conversation that way and wonder what somebody would have for him when he was here, and the lack of anxiety that he spoke with people, like the rich young ruler. It's like, okay, you can leave. Like, it's not,
Right.
but if you die today, do you know where you'll go? It's like, bye, and we'll talk again someday. Like, just the patience to let somebody be on a journey. And
it said he loved him. It said looking at him, he loved him. And yeah, I think that is a hard thing when I think it's Dallas Willard who described Jesus as relaxed. Like the one word to describe Jesus was relaxed. I don't know if that's like a famous Dallas Willard
That's great.
quote.
Yeah.
What one word would you describe Jesus? And his was relaxed. And yeah, I don't think that a belief in hell for everybody who doesn't believe exactly like you is going to lead to that kind of non-anxious presence.
No,
and go ahead, Flo.
No, you can go ahead. It's going to go in a different.
The reality of hell here, and then the seriousness of dealing with the hells that we live in, the hells that we're trapped in, the hells that our lives trap others in. Like, to get very serious about that hell, I see in Jesus as well. It's like, let's address real hell. Let's not be full of anxiety about profitable pretend hell. Get to joyful work. It's just so much freedom in it.
Yeah, I try to do that in my book, and that's a really good way to say it. I don't know if I say it quite as clearly as that one of the problems with a focus on a hell in the afterlife is that we do miss the hells that we create in this life, which I think that actually is what Jesus was talking about. When I kind of explore the metaphor of Gehenna, I do believe that that was hell on earth, that Jesus was talking about the kinds of worlds that we're creating with our failure to love. Or, that we can either build the kingdom of God or we can experience Gehenna in the valley of slaughter. And those are kind of the two paths that are before us. And I think when we export all of that to the afterlife as the primary thing, we are going to miss what Jesus was actually talking about. So that I hope people feel that urgency, that it's not just like, oh, this actually doesn't matter, there's no hell. I think actually it matters more when you realize, oh, we're missing the urge. So there is like a fire and I still believe in fire and brimstone preaching. I think we need more of it. But not about the fire and brimstone that's waiting for us after we die. The bombs that we're dropping right now. We are literally the same people, Christian nationalists, who are doing revival meetings at political rallies and doing altar calls to get people to get saved for the afterlife, so that they're saving them from hell in the afterlife. They are funding the bombs that are creating hell right now in this life in Gaza. And
on children. And I mean, all humans, but children, it's unfathomable.
So I do think that, if your Christianity is going to be focused on that, that's one of the primary things that belief does, is it kind of softens the necessity of justice in this life, because it just pales in comparison. I think there's a lot of Christians that try to have it both ways. I was like a big Tim Keller fan when I was an evangelical pastor. And one thing I liked about Tim Keller was that he centered social justice. He really talked about social justice a lot. He wrote a book called Generous Justice, all about, how the church should be more socially engaged for justice in this world. And so I'm not saying it's impossible to care about social justice and still believe in hell, which Keller did. But I don't think that it ever really works. Like, there's a reason why within that framework, it's always been embattled. Like, Keller amongst his peers was seen as some left-wing kook, which is actually hysterical when you think about it.
Right.
And part of it was when he would talk about justice. I mean, I don't know if you remember, if you were in the world, I was in like this sort of gospel coalition world. So I paid attention to all the publications that came out. But Kevin DeYoung is another gospel coalition guy. And he wrote a book called What is the Mission of the Church? Which was basically, the big idea of that was like, it's not justice, it's salvation. We have to refocus on salvation. And there's almost like he was upset, like that there's been this creeping move to care too much about justice. And we've got to get back focused on the main thing, because hell is hot. And like, what are we doing here? Like, if we're going to piddle around about, like we should do more socially, like the rest of the world can care about that. The church is the only organization that's trying to save people from what really matters, which is hell. And honestly, if hell is real, then that perspective makes perfect sense.
Right.
And honestly, efforts to do justice in this world, what they end up becoming, I point out in the book, is basically a bait and switch, where it's like, come and see the good that we're doing so that you can receive this gospel message that actually, solidifies your fate in the next world. So it never becomes justice for justice's sake or love for love's sake. It's usually justice and love as a means of getting people's feet in the door. And I just think that's really problematic and not the way Jesus operated.
That's maybe kind of a great segue into shifting towards children's spirituality and how these efforts have been aimed at children specifically too. And I mean, like 3 and 4-year-olds with their checkered pasts need to repent. And
the last night at my book event, I had folks, and I wasn't really sure who would be in the room, because it was like literally I just kind of put it out on social media, and there were like 50 people there that I didn't really know, but I kind of had a feeling that if they were drawn to this, then they probably had something like this in their background. So I asked that group to raise thetheir hand if they had ever gotten saved or been converted or accepted Jesus into their heart or been born again or whatever you want to call it. Like, if they did that at some point, raise your hand. Like almost everybody raised their hand, 95% of people. And then I was like, okay, keep your hands up. And if hell was a part of your mental model when you made that decision, like if you knew about hell as a consequence for not getting saved, right? Keep your hand up. And everybody kept their hand up. Like that, those things were intertwined. And I was like, okay, keep your hands up. if that decision was made before you were 10 years old, keep your hands up. And again, like 2 people put their hand down. It was the vast majority of that made that decision, which was this afterlife-based decision about, hey, do you want to be in a relationship with God and become a Christian and go to heaven? Or do you not want to do that and go to hell? Which choice? Like, which way, kid? Like, you choose. This what really wasn't a choice. And this was something that was a very, just a really common experience for the majority of people who grew up in American Christianity. And that shaped the way that we viewed God from a very early age.
Yes.
For me, the concept of God and the concept of hell were absolutely intertwined. I learned about them at the same time. And one of the main reasons that you needed to be in a relationship with God, we talk about relationship with God. For most of us, that relationship started with hell, with the awareness of the consequences for not being in that relationship. And so I don't know how you then expect kids to view God at, we tell them until we're blue in the face. Well, God is love, like, and pure love. But like, it's hard to get away from that the foundation of that decision. Richard Rohr says that how you get there is where you arrive. And if how you get into the relationship is, well, it's this or hell, buddy. I don't know that that's ever going to not be the main. Even though you're never going to say that out loud, I don't think most people will be like, well, I'm a Christian because I'm afraid of not being a Christian. Like that's, we don't want to admit that that's the truth of our spirituality. We want our spirituality to be based in love, but I just don't know how you get there when that's the foundation. And you can theologize, like you can come up with all kinds of theologies about, well, this is why hell is actually a good thing. And this is why it's just, and God doesn't send anybody there. It's self-chosen. It's locked from the inside. You can say all these things, but at the end of the day, like, emotionally, I don't think there's an emotional defense for the fact that we met God in fear. And I know that affected my childhood.
Right. Yeah. And, a lot of my recent MDiv work was about primarily about children's spirituality and ethics of children's spirituality and ethics of, it was more concentrated on the ethics of prayer and how prayers of coercion and even prayers for things like healing and things like that could be very detrimental to children psychologically. And part of that included like altar calls for children and, sharing the gospel with children. When my research in Mark 10, where Jesus blesses the children, is that there was no requirement for children to ask Jesus into their heart. There was no requirement for them to have correct theology. There was nothing of that nature, no prayers, no confession, nothing like that. And yet Jesus says the kingdom of heaven already belongs to these children. And so that was what evangelicalism presents as the gospel to children is so antithetical to the gospel of Jesus, shown clearly, if you want to talk about clear scripture, like clearly to us, demonstrated, like the model of receiving this kingdom is just to be a human. And, children are messy, children cry, children live in their emotions. And so I always thought, like, if this is how the model is for children, what does that say about the rest of humanity? Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, I absolutely agree. I never really thought about that in that sense that, if he says the kingdom of God is for children, he blesses the children, then it's like, well, maybe that's what it looks like to receive the gospel then. Not
right.
This sense, kids are really entitled, in a sense, like to their parents' love. Like they kind of have this expectation that like, yeah, I deserve that love. I'm your kid. You know what I'm saying? And I think that is like perfectly appropriate. Like, and I learned that I was worthy of hell. That's what I deserved. Like baseline, what I deserved was hell. Anything I got above that was grace. That's what grace meant. I received the definition of grace was really it's undeserved favor, which is any favor really, because what you deserve is hell. And so as opposed to I still believe Christianity is about grace, but not grace because you deserve punishment. You deserve baseline hell. And so anything you get, you should just be thankful. That's grace. I believe that the message of grace is the message that we all deserve care and love and grace. Like we deserve that love. That is the message of grace, that you didn't have to do anything to deserve that love. Just being human, just being an image bearer of God, you were made for love, and not like, well, you're not worthy of that love, but God's going to give it to you anyway if you jump through these particular hoops. No, like that, the grace is that it is deserved, actually, and that you didn't have to do anything to deserve it. It is innately your birthright, love. You are entitled to it. You can ask God as a good father, and God, when you find heaven ripped open on the other side of that spiritual veil, is a father who is saying, this is my beloved child. I'm well pleased with you. And that to me is the message of grace now.
That's so beautiful. And so I think it is such a helpful idea for parents who are maybe struggling with letting go of some of these ideas to kind of latch onto that and think about their own relationship with their kids and how much they love their kids. And something I think that you talk about a little bit in your book that's helpful is just that it can be loving parents that inadvertently, but also a little on purpose. I mean, it's hard. It's like intent and impact and all that stuff. But it's like, I know that I remember there being a real fear in me when I was a young parent. And this was like 20 years ago of like, oh, I've got to save my kid's soul from hell. I've got to make sure my kids don't go to hell. Like, that's a huge, like, what a burden on top of just like trying to like get up and brush your teeth like that with a baby. Like, that's like a lot to put on parents. And so I think there are definitely some parents that are just maybe like latch on to this authoritative, high control religion piece because they're terrible people. But like, there's a lot of parents that are just like, I'm scared. I've got, I don't want to spend eternity separated from my child or for them to suffer. And what I think something you talk about in your book also is trusting your intuition on that can't be the way. And I think as a parent for myself, that was probably a huge journey in this direction, was like, I don't think God's sending my kids to hell. Like, this does not feel right.
Absolutely. And I have a lot of sympathy for the fact that my parents still carry that belief about their own children. And my dad recently expressed like he feels like a lousy father because his 3 grown children are not following in that way anymore. And so he fears that we would go to hell. And so that reflects on him then. And so it is pretty hard not to feel like you have to control the outcomes for your kids when the stakes are that high. And you can't control who somebody becomes. You can't control what somebody believes. And I tried to say, like, you're not a lousy dad. Like, the point of parenting is not to control what we believe or what we become. It's to stay connected to us on this journey of life as we become whoever we become. And the thing is, though, it's easy for me to say because I can celebrate who my kids become, because regardless of who they become, even if I don't like it very much, at least I don't think they're going to go to fucking hell.
Right.
I like to wake mine up and tell them, you're already there, kids.
It's only getting worse.
Hell is here. Go to school. It's so funny too, like my own kids, like in their journey, I've got 19, 18, 15, and 12. And when the older 2 were born, I had this fear of like, what if I've never loved anyone like this? And like, what? And that was the seeds of me not believing in that anymore. We're definitely in parenting, but like my kids, they're wrestling. I don't even know if they're wrestling with all of it, but I would say that they know Jesus in a way that they couldn't have if the reason they would have believed. And I don't know, I don't think that today many of them think that Jesus is God, but they know him and they get what he is about and they want what he wants for the world. And I have no worry. At David Bentley Hart, he talks about, he believes that the atheist's refusal to worship a God unworthy of worship is a truer act of worship than confessing a God so clearly unworthy of worship. And that's, I don't want to tell my kids, you're worshiping God like that. I don't mean it like that, but for what I believe about the world, I feel like that's worship. But there is just this shocking gift that we get back when it's not fear to love everyone. And like you quoted Merton, and just that freedom really in parenting to really not be obsessed with the outcomes, but really get to be with them through it all. Yeah, your book, I just sense that freedom, and it's inspiring.
It's been incredibly refreshing. I lived with, so when I was a pastor, let's see, my kids were 3 and 5 when I left. And so 5, he was just getting at that age where I'm supposed to get this kid saved, aren't I? And the other pastors,
time's almost up.
Their kids were starting to get saved. Their kids were starting to have they were having those moments, and we were celebrating it at, staff meeting, like, oh my gosh, we led them to the Lord last night at family devotions or whatever, right? And I remember feeling like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing that, huh? But it didn't ever sit right with me. And I was in process theologically as well with what I believed about all that, but I was still in the world where that was very much what you were supposed to be doing. And I didn't fully, in some ways, I didn't take apart some of the last bits of it until getting out of the evangelical institution. Because from within, it is very hard to, I think to change your mind about something that would mean losing your entire community and that sort of thing. So I was still like, I was more like a hopeful universalist, but I couldn't have really gone all in with the position I was at now. And I still felt like probably, they're supposed to get converted, at some level. Like that was just, that was drilled into me from so young. And so I was beginning to feel a sense of fear for like, oh, am I ever going to be able to because it didn't feel right. And I grew up never being very good at evangelism, and we did evangelism. We went out and did tract distribution like every week growing up. My dad I wasn't just a pastor kid. I was like a missionary kid. We were on like missionary support to New York City.
Oh man.
And so we would go hit the streets of downtown New York with gospel tracts. And my dad was so good at getting into these conversations with people and asking them, like, if you were to die today, do you know for sure where you would go? And I always felt guilty that I wasn't better at that, because it felt like if I was more spiritual, if I was taking this more seriously, then I would have done that. And now I'm able to see that my intuition always felt icky about it, because it is actually icky. It actually is a gross thing to be like, oh, I don't know you. I'm not in a relationship with you. I'd like to push my worldview onto you. Let's talk about death. It actually is very aggressive and also very superior to assume when you enter a relationship that they need something from you, as opposed to maybe you need to learn something from them. None of that felt right. And yet within the doctrine of hell, believing that we had the answer and they needed to be saved, it was right. And then when it came to my own kids, I just couldn't square that circle. It never felt right. So I was really happy to leave while my kids were still very young. And so I've never pushed the gospel on my kids in that way. Well, I don't believe that that's even the gospel. I wouldn't say that, that message about, believe in Jesus, accept him in your heart so you can go to heaven when you die is the gospel. But I never, so they'll never have that experience of like, hey, I want you to become a Christian because, of hell and heaven and this whole story. So they'll joke about hell. They think it's funny that I wrote a book about it. They'll like talk about hell and laugh. And I think that's wonderful.
We have a family chat. Yeah, and I've got my two kids are in college, and they're at the same school, the State University in Tennessee, and my oldest kid, they text our family chat and said, I was just proselytized to, like, on campus, and they were like, somebody came up to me and said, like, do you know that you wouldn't go to hell if you died today? And Sage says, they said, I said, my mom's a priest and she doesn't believe hell is real. And then like, and said the lady said, oh honey, it's real. And but Sage just laughed. Like, she was like, I just like thought it was so funny and just laughed. Like, this is ridiculous. And I think there was another time, I can't remember the exact specifics, but someone knocked on their door and Sage answered, and they tried to share the gospel with them, and Sage just said, nice verse. That was it.
Isn't it wild? I mean, for the three of us to have kids that aren't anxious about this, it's remarkable. yeah, I think that that's a miracle of grace in my life that didn't get
Yeah.
sent down. I mean, they've got, anxiety in other places, but to not
Yeah.
have it around this God that is really just an insecure prick at the end of the day, who can't handle, which again, and we're in kids, and this does all come out on the kids, but the direct line between the cruelty of our nation right now. And even as I heard you, Brian, talking about, it's grace, you should be in hell. It's grace just to have another breath. That's absolutely connected to what the United States unleashes on the rest of the world, where it's like, oh, really? Like you were bombed today? Well, you're lucky you're not in hell. And it's just so cruel, and it gets so violent and murderous so quickly. When
I
your
think
God
even our own
is,
citizens, like how we view, I think about our unhoused population and how we really struggle in our country with welfare of any kind, that the government would provide things for people. You can't just give somebody something, everything does have to be earned. The way that we see it, like even when there needs to be a work requirement if we're going to give unhoused people, food or something. Well, we're making them work, right? At some point, like you can't just, no, it's like actually like people just need to eat. Like they shouldn't have to. No, like these are hungry people. We don't need requirements. I think grace for me, when you start with a baseline position that people deserve to be punished versus a baseline position that people just deserve love, care, connection, warmth, I do think that in fact changes how you interact with the world and just treat people and what kind of world we want to imagine for one another. And so I do believe you will imagine a pretty bleak, unforgiving, hellish world when you believe that that's what people deserve versus that love is what people deserve.
Yeah, and I think it also is reflective on, it starts with even loving yourself, and how that was a message that I received as a child that was wrong, because the problem, I mean, this was like 80s, but I remember my youth group, and 80s and 90s, my youth group or Sunday school being like, the message of the world is that you need self-esteem, but you have plenty of self-esteem. Like the problem is you have too much self-esteem. Like I remember that message so explicitly. Like you do not need to love yourself.
Message at some
point. But like, of course you can't love other people if you hate yourself that much. Like that's just the hatred, the self-hatred, the hatred of others stems so much from this punitive God that would send. And you write about this. I think that was one of the most like compelling moments for me, that's incompatible with love your enemies. Like you talk about the statement of love your enemies, how God would tell us to do that, but God
no interest in
sends
doing
people
that
to hell. Like I thought that was really
also,
that was profound.
Like we know what changes people. And it's grace, it's love, it's mercy that changes people. Like I think of that classic scene in Les Mis, right? Where, you have this thief and the priest gives him bread. And like, that is this moment of transformation. That's that when we're struck by grace, that is where transformation happens. It's God's kindness that leads us to repentance, like to put a proof text on it. And yet we believe that God is a punisher and that people deserve punishment for their wrongdoings. But like, that's not how reconciliation happens. If God is a punisher, then God couldn't do the work of reconciliation. God doesn't reconcile God's enemies by punishing them, but by loving them. That's the whole point. And so I don't know how we have these different standards for how we're supposed to treat people, but then that does in fact then change. That does affect how we treat people as well. I think of even like our carceral system, which is incredibly punitive. And there's all kinds of data now, a growing body of research that says that, rehabilitative, restoration-based programs work far better than punitive carceral programs. They have in countries that really focus on the people's redemption, recovery, restoration. They have lower, and I always mispronounce this word, recidivism. I want to say, did I say that right?
I respect you for trying. I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
Recidivism rates, the rate of being reincarcerated, lower reincarceration rates. I should just go with that. And we have a very high reincarceration rate because we don't really focus on that. somebody asked me in an interview recently, which I thought was a really interesting question. They were like, if you could reimagine hell, like, and make it what you think it should be, like, what should it be? And I was like, whoa, I've never thought about that before. But I think that if there had to be something like hell, well, if based in like God's character and even what we know about our own like justice system and what leads to wholeness, what leads to flourishing, it should be more like a rehabilitation center, a purely punitive place. That's not where an image bearer should go. A never-ending punishment is not fit for an image bearer of God. Somebody who's deserving of divine love, no, if that person is not fit for society, for the kingdom, cannot be in community in that way, then they should be in a space where they are being brought through a process. And by the way, it's not punishment that leads to the kind of change that we're looking for people to experience.
Right.
That doesn't work. That hardens us. That makes us actually worse people. It is only love and grace and mercy and kindness that leads us into the kind of change that we want to experience. I was raised being told that like my bad behavior deserved immediate punishment, not natural consequences, but punishment. And that was a pathway that was supposed to be the pathway towards transformation. But what that actually does, you learn to cut off parts of yourself. Certainly you learn maybe some of the behavior will stop, right? Because you learn how to suppress certain behaviors, but that is not how hearts change. And so this whole hell system is not fit for a God of love.
Amen.
Sorry, I was just ranting there for a minute.
No, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
The White Stripes song, "You Don't Know What Love Is." You don't know what love is. You do as you're told. Ooh. And I always think of that. That song is so powerful in that. And yeah, Jack White writes about, I'm saying this because I want something better for you. Like, you learn what love is. Quit just obeying these rules. And that, yeah, the God that would want to reduce us to rule keepers. Like, it's just, where is that ever compelling in real relationships? I would love to ask you about your dedication, just out of the gate, especially in the context of children's spirituality, the dedication for the book, for my children, for my own inner child, and for the children still squirming anxiously in the pews. I think we've talked a little bit about your kids, and you're welcome to talk more about that. But I'm so curious for your own inner child, like, what is there? Jesus talks about getting back what's lost, prophetic language, like what has been eaten by the locusts, like I'm going to restore, like, just in your journey right now, what might have space to be part of you now that wasn't allowed to then?
I am, through my parenting of my children, I often do feel like I'm reparenting myself. I can be quite punitive still. That is very much wired into my being. And those patterns were set pretty young, and it is still a battle that I'm working through. And I will find myself, I think I do mention in the book, at times when my kids are acting in a way that, my parents would have called it rebellious or disobedient. Now you might say they're dysregulated, or maybe, I don't know, they're just being kids, whatever. Like, they're just not listening to me in that particular instance because their brains can't focus on two things at the same time, whatever's happening. I often do feel this thing rise up in me that comes from a few different places. One, I was told that, like, this is what people deserve. I was parented this way. This is, if I was acting like that as a kid, I would have been punished. And so it does feel like, well, it wouldn't be fair if they're not punished. Like, I was punished for this kind of behavior. And then also I was told, like, I remember even seeing parents out in public whose kids were being rambunctious in some particular way, or maybe not listening to them or disobeying their authority. Authority was really important, right? Like, not just the action that you did, whether the action caused harm, but actually if you were to disregard like the command of your authority, that alone was worthy of punishment, because really had to respect those authorities. And when parents weren't like protective of their authority, my parents would point out, like, oh, they're just like getting walked all over. They're bad parents, basically. And I don't want to be a bad parent. So I still have this like feeling over my shoulder, almost like, well, I can't just let my kids get away with that. That would make me a bad parent. Like, what about my authority? They need to respect my authority. So I have this like visceral sort of, they should be punished. They should respect my authority. I have it like rise up in me. And sometimes I still do act out of that space. But I often find that it provides a lot of ability to reflect. on what's still going on in me and why I would feel that way. And I'm able to remind myself that they don't deserve punishment, and I didn't either.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives me the opportunity to offer them something different, maybe starting with an apology, which I have to do frequently still. And that has been over the last few years, it's been a very profound process that I'm still, in process. I would have hoped that after I don't know, 3 or 4 years of doing this, I'd be really good at it now. It's and now I no longer parent with any punishment. I just fully lean into connection. But no, it doesn't always work like that. It has been an ongoing process, but I have seen growth, and I have also, been able to, I think, offer myself some of what I didn't exactly get. And that has been, it has been healing. It does still make me sad. I still feel a little sad for, the fact that I was raised that way. I don't blame my parents. They were doing the best they could. And I think a lot of kids had it far worse. This is a very common thing. I'm not it wasn't exceptional in that way. But yeah, that has been healing for my inner child. And, I think also even in my relationship with God and being able to receive God's love in a way that I do think it hits different when it's I'm a worm, but God loves me anyway, versus God. I don't believe that God loves me in spite of who I am anymore. I believe that I'm worthy of love.
Yeah.
And I am beginning to be able to stand 10 toes down on that.
Yeah. That makes me think of that podcast, Willie James Jennings podcast that Danny, you shared with me years ago, where it talks about, and he probably writes about this too, but this is where I heard it, where he talks about the desire of God and the incarnation, and the incarnation being about God wanting to be with God's people just because of God's love for humanity, not because I've got to go down there and become a stupid person and live with stupid people and all this stuff. That's the attitudes I've been raised with, was oh gosh, God loved us so much that he became a person, instead of God, God's desire for humanity was so strong and compelling. That's what sent God into humanity. And I hear that in what you're saying as well. Yeah. And my favorite thing when I tell the kids, the creation story is at the end saying and what did God call you? And they're good. And I mean, that would be it's so wild that that's straight from scripture, but that would have been oh my gosh.
I think I would have said deserving of death.
A worm.
A worm.
Maybe the three of us can do this together. Maybe. What about a children's book where the worms are told they're people and they feel horrible about themselves? We're like people. They're terrible.
Oh man.
And Brian, as I hear you in that space, even just the journey of back to be allowed to still grow, to admit struggles, to not have to wear the pretense of, not that you don't strike me as having ever been real pretentious, but the pressures of presenting something on the outside, of going to staff meeting and saying, kids got saved last night at dinner. It really puts a damper on real communion.
Yeah. And
to be on the three of us at wherever we are in our parenting journeys and stuff, to be able to have that freedom to be, God's still making me too, in those spaces, and that changing it from crime and punishment to new creation, that creation wasn't a one-time event, but it's still happening. Just all those things are just so gentle and so much more agency and dignity and respect. And it really comes from that shift, I think, that you're talking about, of it's not punitive. And maybe God can't be punitive. The nature is so good and so merciful and so gracious.
That's where I've landed.
Not even possible.
Yeah. And that was a big shift for me, which still, I think, some people want God to be, God is love, but God is also just. And they'll do that. And what they don't realize they're doing, I do believe God is just. I just don't think justice is the same thing as punishment. I think we conflate those two. God's justice is restorative, and does often include natural consequences. I think that's just a very different thing from punitiveness. I think, yeah, we struggle with that. There's something I included in the book. Was something I put on my social media a couple of years ago. I asked a question: what would be different about your spirituality if you knew that there was no punishment in God whatsoever? And I remember when I thought of that question, it was for me, really, because I was coming to that belief and I was realizing that it was a hard thing to believe, but it was something I really wanted to be true. And it was also something that felt very true. And also, if we get our view of who God is from who Jesus is, Jesus never punishes anybody. And Jesus uses God's power only in one direction. It's only to heal. It's only to restore. I guess he cursed the fig tree, so that one exception. Wasn't a person, and that was a parable.
I mean,
yeah,
the fig tree was asking for it.
No, that was even an illustration of, I think, the natural consequences that would come on a people that refused to embrace God's love. That was really what that was a warning. No, Jesus uses God's power to heal. And I threw that out there, and people's answers were really quite moving. I included a few of them in the book. And I did. So that in some ways is the shift that I'm trying to help people with in the book. If you could maybe whittle it down, it is less about the existence of hell in some ways, and maybe even more about the very nature of God. I don't think we can have the relationship with God that Jesus had. I don't think you can have that with a punishing God.
Yeah.
That opens my mind to so many curiosities. Just even the that Jesus never lived a day in fear of hell. I mean, and what maybe that's another thing to admire and take away from his life, and emulate. It's just like, this is a fearless life that knows love is what outlasts it all. That's beautiful.
Well, go ahead.
Well, the end of your book talking about the way of love speaks so much to that. And again, my work with helps me in my work with caregivers and parents who especially deconstructed parents, I think, who don't know what to do about spirituality with kids and don't know, what am I supposed to do? Tell them about God, ignore it? What and these are folks that a lot of times are still wanting to come to church for that community, and they just don't know how to hand that to their kids or share this with their children in a way that's not going to traumatize them. And now that's the fear. I feel like it's shifted to from I don't want my kids to go to hell to I don't want to create hell for my kids out of Christianity. And some of that pendulum swing, I think, has people being well, then I'm not gonna don't address it at all. Don't invite them into any kind of faith or spirituality. And in my work and research, it's so evident and clear that spirituality is innate. And that doesn't mean Christian spirituality,
right.
But spirituality is innate to children. I mean, it is there. Children are having their own experiences of God and the divine that we have no idea. We don't know what they're experiencing, but they're very real happening there. And I think you're talking about living into this way of life and way of love with Jesus is a great invitation to parents that is not fearful, and to say we still honor a child's spirituality and that this thing exists. We're not going to cut that off and neglect that part of a child either, just because of the possibility of trauma by this unhealthy way. And I think that I wonder what you would maybe have to say to that and in that space.
I love what you just said. I will say I don't feel like I'm an expert on this, because in some ways I feel like I learned such a bad paradigm that it is easy to do what you just said a minute ago, which is wow, I just don't even want to go there, because I just feel like this whole thing will just screw them up in all kinds of ways. So I understand that impulse. but I've seen also what you just said, the innate spirituality of kids. And so how I've kind of approached it, and this is not prescriptive. I don't know that I have this figured out. I think I could probably do better in a lot of ways, but I try to ask them questions. And I try to be curious about what they're seeing. And so I will occasionally ask them if it comes up, yeah, what do you think God is like? You know, and I want them to just express what they are experiencing of the divine in the natural world from their own intuition. And those are usually pretty good, interesting conversations. And then I think the other thing that I've just come to really believe is that you can't control people and who they become, but you can model the behavior that you want to see. That's really the best thing that you can do in any relationship. Is not to, you can't pressure somebody into becoming something. You can try to control them, and you might change some surface behaviors, but that doesn't actually, make people's hearts bloom in love in the way that you're wanting. But when you model something, so I try to model connection. What I really want my kids is, for me, spirituality as I understand it, is to be connected to yourself and to other people, and ultimately to God, which I think the way that we connect to God is primarily by connecting to ourselves and to other people. And so if my kids are deeply connected to themselves and have deep, meaningful relationships with others, I kind of don't really care what they believe theologically.
Right.
That being said, I would love it if they got an interest in that sort of thing. But to me, and maybe I'm thinking about this wrong. I'm not saying I've got it figured out, but it almost feels like a hobby at this point. Like it's like a way of talking about something that's really niche, and that I just know it's not going to be for everybody. And
Totally.
I like to nerd out on it. But like, if my kids don't become like big God people, I'm not that worried about that. If I believe them to be connected to what matters, and to love. And there's just a lot of names for it.
Yep.
My girlfriend's not a Christian, and we were in church the other day, and I think Christ was getting thrown around a lot, like the word Christ. And I was just like, I don't know if it's as helpful or not, but like, whenever you hear him say Christ, just like substitute love. And like, I think most of what is being said here will probably connect, basically.
Yeah.
And I just think there's a lot of ways of talking about it. And for me, Jesus exemplifies and embodies that in a way that is special, that is unique, that I feel captured by. But I am not, I have no need to be superior and to say that that's the only way to access the kind of love that we were made for.
Yeah.
Gregory Boyle, in one of his books, writes about, do you know who he is? The Homeboy Ministries in LA. And
I love
he writes
him.
about driving through Indiana, and I think it was Indiana, and seeing a billboard that says, Jesus, the only way to God. And Boyle wrote something to the effect of, they better not tell Jesus. Like, that's not what he's saying about salvation and love. And, again, reduce it to this prayer and you don't go to hell. I was thinking about the hand raising thing you did last night of like, how old were you? Was hell part of it? And then another question would be, how many times have you been saved? Or how many times were you saved before you were 10? I was like, I won best Christian attitude. Like, my senior superlative in high school, there was this girl who would make fun of me and walk up and like rub her finger on my skin and go, I was like so squeaky clean. And I was like the first to every altar call, because I thought I was horrible inside. And
totally,
just those phases of being saved over and over and over again.
It's so funny because like, we were taking it so seriously, right? And look where we've ended up. And it's not, and I think sometimes it is the people that really take that to heart, like hell. And it was like the rapture, just this last week, there was, you probably saw Rapture Talk, and people are all, by the way, it's rescheduled.
Missed it. No.
It didn't happen, but they said we were using the wrong calendar. There was a calendar issue. And so, not Gregorian, but the Boolean calendar. Like so based on that, it's October 7th and 8th. So anyway, Rapture is rescheduled.
Still time.
But thanks for working this in. On our last week.
Well, I saw a video of a girl who was just like panicking about it, And I found a lot of the rapture stuff to be quite silly. It's just so silly, right? So I was making jokes, and I think that's totally fine. We can make jokes about bad theology. We should be able to make jokes about it. But this person who was really in it, who was like believing it, was having a panic attack because she was like, I just don't understand how all these people are saying this is going to happen in just a couple of days. We're all going to be zapped up. And like, what about my kids? Like, what about my relationship with my kids? Like, are we all going to go? Are we going to end up in the same place? Will they even be my kids up there? Like, even if we all go to heaven, like, you know, like what I only have a couple more days to enjoy them in this way. And like, I don't know, I'm freaking out, man. Is nobody else freaking out about this? And I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about that, but the thought that really stuck with me was just like, she was taking it seriously what they were telling her. And sometimes the people who are saying these things are not thinking through the implication of like telling a kid about hell. Like some of us kids are going to take that shit seriously.
Yeah.
And I did. And I responded to every altar call like hell was on the line.
Yeah.
And it is almost like there's people who stay with it, and it's almost like they're able to compartmentalize the emotional impact of the shit that they actually are saying and believing. And those of us who actually really wrestled with it deeply, I think usually deconstruction, this is not people who didn't take their faith seriously enough. We rode that thing all the way down.
And I think another interesting part of it, I think the three of us, I think, Flo, I don't know. I'm curious, Flo, if you would agree with this or if it was part of your formation. But like, Brian, I think definitely you and I, we were also really trained on how to be hated. And so like these people who are taking it very seriously are also being told, you'll be persecuted for this. And it's like they got us ready, in a sense, to say these things that we learned in taking it seriously. And there was an emotional preparation to be hated for it, in a sense. I don't know. I was thinking about that as I've listened to you, even on other podcasts, and your energy and your fire for it all. Like, and just that, like, even that's part of the formation, but it's so beautiful when it becomes that committed to love in the world. I find it. I find it humorous that you were trained for it.
It is funny though. Sometimes I'm like, why am I still talking about all this stuff? Oh, I know why. Man. Because literally from birth, I was told that my life had to count for eternity and I needed to be on mission because only what's done for Christ will last. And it's hard to shake some of that.
Yeah.
So while that means something different for me now than it did, it is still hard to just be like, oh, I guess I'll just like get a project management job or something.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's a tough thing to shake that eternal, you know, and you know, I'm not saying that there's not also probably some low level narcissism in there, like there is for anybody who's spent time as a pastor, probably. But I think the hero complex, I don't know. I do think about it sometimes, like, why can't I shut up about this and just like be normal for 5 minutes?
I understand.
You get it. You get it.
Yeah, we've talked about that with like, why can't we just go get other jobs? And Danny's been like, we'll still keep talking about this at those other jobs. Like, it's never.
I would be like trying to overthrow management at Subway. Like, I can't stop. Like, it doesn't matter what I'm doing. We're looking for the injustice and how to take it out.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I think we're coming up on an hour. Flo, did you want to add anything else?
Yeah, I know we're coming up. I have maybe one question that I would love to hear you. I mean, we've talked a little bit about kind of your spirituality as a child, but I wonder if there is anything about God or the divine that you recall from your childhood that was like nudging you towards this path, that was like pushing against those voices that you were hearing that was saying like, you are a worm, you're a little sinner, that was like welcoming you into love, and like what that might have felt like, or where it was, or what that experience was.
You know, the name of my Substack is Beloved, and that's, you know, one of my favorite words and concepts. And I think now that true spirituality doesn't start with the awareness of our deservingness to be punished, but of our belovedness. And beloved also was what my dad would call the congregation in his preaching, like in his preach, he'd be
Mm.
like, and beloved, the word said, but he would say it like, you know, in any given sermon 30 times, probably call us beloved. And I still think about that. And I do believe that that was always his heart. And my dad is actually a really loving guy. And it makes me sad that he has some of these punitive beliefs about God that are just really ingrained in his worldview that are pretty hard to tear out. But I also did hear about a God of love. It just stood beside this God of punishment. As a result, I think love was transformed into something that often didn't feel a lot like love. I think that if God is love and God can be a punisher, then love can include punishment, which means our love can include punishment. And it does actually twist the very meaning of love in many ways. But there was still love. And I did feel often that heart behind it all. And it was like just standing with contradictions. And so it is nice to be able to strip away and realize that, yeah, we never actually needed the punishment for the love to be real. But the love was always there. And I do think that it was there even early on. And I still even feel it from my dad. And I believe that, I mean, yeah, I'm a universalist, man. So I believe my dad is moving towards love in some way as well, even while he holds on to some of these beliefs that nothing is going to stop that advance of love. I want to believe that that's what faith looks like for me.
Yeah.
That love will win and overcome all of that, you know? But yeah, I think that's all.
Yeah. So thank you.
And then I don't know if you've listened to the podcast yet, but we wear our collars because we end each podcast with confession. So
Perfect.
Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So prepare. What would you?
We can absolve. We have powers. I don't know if you do that. We have special powers. Anyways, just kidding. Thank you so much. Great to see you this morning.
And yes, reminder that this is Brian Recker, author of Hellbent, a book that I feel like feel funny saying this. Give it to all your friends and family, but that's like that's how I feel.
I'm so glad you feel that way. I wanted it to, and there's also a study guide, by the way. The book doesn't have a built-in study guide. Like some books have like questions at the end of chapters. It doesn't have that, but on my website, brianrecker.com, or at the link in my Instagram bio, there's a link as well. You can find a free study guide. It's just a PDF that you can download that has each like questions for discussion or personal reflection for each chapter. I think it would be, a cool thing to do with a group of people, especially, you know, for some people, this is going to be confirmation of what they've been feeling and believing for a long time. For other people, it could be quite a paradigm shift. And so I'm excited to hear about those people that maybe for the first time are encountering this kind of idea. And I tried to walk you through it. So hopefully I did a good job of people that are maybe encountering this and need to, because I think it's one thing, and just really quick, I know we're about done, but like what I do in the last third of the book is for a lot of people, once you say, well, yeah, I don't think God's a punisher. I don't think this is a hell. It's like, wait, what do I do with Jesus? Why did Jesus die? Why did Jesus live? Like, what is this whole story about? Like, punishment was so woven into our Christianity that it is really hard to that's like taking the Jenga block out that is very load bearing, you know, it does seem like the whole tower is going to come down. And so I'm hopeful that we can not get like all the answers in place and new dogmas and a new rigid system in place. But I think to begin to learn how to embrace some curiosity and your own intuition around these things, but to still hold on to Jesus if that's something that you want to do. I'm hopeful for that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to try to throw that in too. Just like, it's also this like really beautiful thing to hand to somebody to say, this is what I believe about Jesus in a real disarming way, even that, you know, like taking ourselves out of like, I'm going to convince you of it, but just like, hey, here's a book about why we don't think hell is what you've been told. And if you want to stick around for the end, who we think Jesus is.
And Danny and I have talked about this. Oh, so sorry.
That's it.
That there's this need that people have a lot of times, like for better or for worse, to be given permission to kind of believe the things that they intuitively believe or want to believe. And it's sometimes I feel like, oh, that's a lot of power. I don't want that. But like people being a pastor and saying you're allowed to believe this is really powerful for people a lot of the times.
Yeah, it's almost like, I mean, I hate to say it, but this is how we've been conditioned and socialized, that we need like a white guy with a degree to tell us that we're allowed to believe something.
Right.
With a collar,
Mhm.
ideally,
Well,
honestly.
with a collar,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
Not
depending
a
on what
lady,
condition.
not a lady. We're getting there. So, but
Yeah, and so I understand that like I carry that privilege, and I want to break that system, and I try to point to a lot of
yeah,
different diverse voices, even both within the book and also in my other work. But I also know that one of the things that I can do for people who were socialized that way is to try to point them towards being allowed to have permission to listen to themselves.
yeah,
And I mean, these are things that Indigenous people have been saying for a long
right,
time, that queer people have been
right.
saying for a long time, but we were
Yes,
raised where we're not supposed to listen to those people.
yeah.
And so it is like a system that did gatekeep us from being able to listen to the voices that were trying to liberate us. And so if
Mm.
I have a privileged voice, I want to try to enter that cacophony of liberation.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's so fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Really good to see you again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Danny, I
really
appreciate
good.
you,
Really
man.
fun conversation. I am going to end we'll edit this part out. I'm going to end the recording, but you don't have to leave right away. Folks have been like jumping off and we're like, wait, thank you. So,
Sick of us.
so, yeah, Brian, thank you so much. It's been such a privilege to talk with you.
Yeah.